So as Danny was saying, but first of all, I'd just like to thank the Lord for my salvation, and I don't take that lightly, because I'm standing here today. If you knew what I come back from, where we'll get into, you'll realise. I'd like to thank my spiritual mother and father, Roy and Danielle Farrell, for being there and leading me down this path. But we'll start off with me. So I'm James English. I'm 45 years of age. I'm from a small town in Scotland, a council estate. So I had a good upbringing. I've got 4 brothers and a sister. So it was a big family where I grew up. We used to say that we weren't brought up, we were dragged up. It was in the council estate. My family never had much back then, and then we were just going through school as it was. But my mother had cancer, so me, my twin brother, my younger brother, my older brother and my older sister were all in the one house. So when my mum had the cancer, we had to put her bed in the living room, and to watch and go through that kind of stuff and kind of see it, it was just kind of natural back then. But when my mum died of the cancer, I was 13 years of age, and that had a big impact on my family. So my dad had tried to keep us away from the social work, to keep all the family together. Because back then, if you got the social work involved, we'd end up in children's homes and the family would be separated. So it kind of kept us all together. We didn't want this life. We didn't want what was the hand that we were dealt with, as you say. So when we were in that kind of life, my father and his friends were involved in whatever crimes that were about the scheme, and we just tried to fit in. Me and my brothers, we just tried to fit in wherever we went, wherever we could get accepted, because that was the main thing. So we're just going through life, going through battles, fighting in gangs for other parts of the town. As I got older, I started getting involved in taking drugs. I started smoking cannabis. I started drinking, staying out all night, not getting back home, running away from home. I was running away from home with kids that had run away from the children's homes, and I always used to get told that we're going back there. So me and my twin were dead close. We were always close, so wherever I went, he went with me. Even when I turned 16 years of age, the prison life started. So I ended up in prison. My twin brother, he ended up coming into prison with me. So back then, when I was going into prisons, it was like 20 of us from the same housing scheme in the same block in prison. So it was just like going back outside. So it was familiar, we were familiar with it. I would get in, I would get out of prison and go back to the same stuff. I'd get out of prison and go back to the same kind of people, my friends that were there. They were still doing the same stuff, nothing had changed. Then when my older brother left the house, that's when I started to get the blame for everything my brothers would do, my younger brother would do. All the blame would come on me. So started getting beatings from my dad and whatever, getting kicked out of the house. And then I would always go back. But then when I was 17, I got my own house. and moved into that. So I just go through life, as I say, try to fit in to wherever it was I landed. I ended up going to England, trying to get away from wherever it was. Still get into trouble down there. I always used to say, no matter where I went, I always felt that trouble always followed me. That's the way I always felt in life. I didn't want any of that because I always felt that I was a better person inside, but it was just the situation that I was in. No matter where I was landed, I would try and survive. So I came back to Scotland, still in addiction. My older brother, he was in his own house with his girlfriend and started taking heroin. So I ended up being there one night, picked up the bit of tinfoil that he had and ended up taking it myself. So it blocked out whatever troubles I was going through. It made me feel better. It gave me a sense of confidence. This drug gave me a confidence that I never ever had. So I ended up kept dabbling in it, whatever. I was still with my kid's mother, who I'd been with when I was 15 years of age. She always stuck by me when I went to prison and stuff. And then when I was still taking heroin and stuff, I was hiding it for every day. I used to stay away from my dad's bit because my eyes would be pinned and he would know that I was on something. So I never went near MD when I started taking it. I always stayed away for every day, so I was always isolating myself away from people when I was taking stuff like that. So I felt, even though I was alone, I felt at peace in there. I thought that was peace in my life. Even when I went back to prison, I felt comfortable because I was around people that I grew up with and I knew. So as life went on, I ended up taking street Valium. So most of my friends were dying with street Valium back then. I've lost so many friends through methadone and street Valium. So I ended up in prison in 2019, and I always remember it. I got a few years in prison, and I was going to the doctor and I was saying I was on the street Valium and I was rattling, and they were saying, well, we'll put you on methadone. And the lads that I was in with that was on methadone had said to me, James, don't go there. Don't go down that road, you'll regret it. And I always remember saying, because I was that much into myself and I was thinking, poor me, I've got a few years to do in prison. Poor me, I'll just go on this and it'll block everything out. And I always remember it. When I was taking that methadone, and I was getting high for 7 weeks in the prison. Every day I would go down to the queue and get it, and it was giving me a buzz. And I always remember that 7 weeks, and then it never done nothing for me. It never done nothing for me. So when I got out of prison, I was on it. I was trying to hide it. I couldn't go to the chemist because my dad would have found it. I couldn't go to the chemist because my kid's mother would have found it. My kids would have found it. I couldn't go. So I was back into taking heroin and tablets and trying to hide it. And my life just spiraled out of control. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to live at the time. I didn't even want to be on the drugs. I just kept taking them because it made me feel a bit better for that 10 minutes in my life. And then it would just go back to a plunge of depression, suicidal thoughts. I didn't want to be a bookender. Even when I took drugs, I didn't want to be a bookender. I felt as if I was that greedy. I wanted it all for myself. For that 10 minutes, of high, that I would just be there and I'd have that sense of glory round about me, and then I'd end up back in prison. So I ends up out of prison for a wee while. 2020, we had my daughter. So my life kind of settled down for a wee bit after that, for about a year. And then I ended up back in drugs again, ended up back in the heroin, ended up back in crack cocaine was round about at the time, so I ended up back in that, but I was still taking the tablets. But the thing was with the tablets, I was taking that much of them, I didn't even know who I was, I didn't even know where I was, I didn't even know what I'd done the day before. I just knew that I was existing, and I always remember thinking and saying to myself, you're just here, you're just existing, you're not having a life. I wasn't there for my kids, I wasn't there for my kids' mother, I was just being there, and I felt as if I was just a body that was walking about, causing havoc everywhere it went, because that's the only thing that these tablets ever done to me. I never even wanted to be that person, but that's the person that I thought I'd became. I just thought that was my life. I always remember thinking, this is just going to be you for the rest of your life. And then I ended up, I was on tablets. I didn't even remember where I'd went. I'd went to somebody's house. They gave me a firearm. I'd put it in my jacket, forgot I even had it. The police had caught me with it, sent me to prison for a good while. And then in that sentence, there was a guy that I grew up with. So I used to sell drugs for this guy. That's when my dad and his dad were friends, and they all used to sell drugs together. But he'd changed his life. He'd became a Christian and met Jesus, and he used to always come up to prison every week, and I always remember it. I always remember saying to the lads up in the hall, they were like, where are you going? And I would be like, I'm going down to see Charles, I'm going down to get my coffee, I'm going down to get my chocolate. Because that's why I was there, but I didn't know what was happening then. I was down there and he was saying to me, you need to get God in your life. You're going to die wherever you are. He says, James, you keep going back out there. He says, and look. He says, look at your life. He says, you're going to end up 6 feet under, or you're going to end up doing life in prison. So I used to always just blank it out, go back up to the hall, do what I was doing up in the hall, and then Charles would appear again the next week. No problem, go and see him and whatever. But then the mayhem that was in prisons back then, I didn't even want to be in the prison. I was just there existing. Wherever I landed, I would try and survive. My twin brother was always coming in and out of prison. And because I'd been in for that long, I was thinking back to how many times I had seen him coming in, getting back out, coming in, even worse than what he was the last time, through the heroin, through the methadone, through the tablets. And then I'd phone back. My dad and that would say, oh, your friend Duncan's died, or John's died, or Marie's died. And that was an every week thing that was coming in my life, and I was thinking, wow, I need to change something. And I always remember I had about 3 weeks to go to get out of prison, and something happened. The legal highs were in the prison. A few folk had came to me and they were saying, oh, can you come and stand at this door? Make sure nobody comes in. And I was like, yeah, no problem, whatever. And a guy gets seriously injured. And I was thinking, I can't believe that I'm still in this position. I can't believe that I've made my life feel comfortable with the positions that I've been in, even going through there. And I felt as if things like that were okay, but this time was different. This time I was like, I'm sick and tired about being sick and tired. I mean, how many times I thought I was sick and tired, but this time it was different. I felt it for the inside. I felt as if I was getting a sense of a feeling back in my life, and I was thinking, wow, I need to go for here. So then I got out of prison in 2019, and Charles came up 2 days before I got out of prison, and he said to me, James, I've got somewhere for you to go to get your life changed. And I was thinking, yeah, no problem. I just need to get out of Ayrshire. Ayrshire was a wee town where I was living in Scotland. And I was thinking, I'm going to go where you're going to send me here, just to get away from here for a bit, for my head to settle for coming out of prison again. Because every time I went back to my housing scheme, it was only 2 weeks later, I would end up back in handcuffs, or a hospital bed, or I would be at a funeral. So he said, I've got this place, it's called Victory Outreach in Liverpool. It's a Christian rehabilitation home. He says, and it'll change your life. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try this. I've tried everything else and it never worked. So I came to Victory Outreach in 2019 at the end, getting into 2020. Gave my life to the Lord in the rehabilitation home, in the discipleship home. And I was speaking to somebody tonight, and there was a lot of people used to say to me, when did you start believing in God? And I used to say, do you know what? It's not that I didn't believe in God. I didn't understand. I knew that there was something there, but I didn't understand who God was. But this discipleship home taught me who God was. I get discipled to go in and learn who Jesus was, learn who God was in my life. But I had to accept that. So the program was a 12-month program. I went through the 12-month program. As you heard Danny saying, sometimes it was rough. But I went through my rough times and I went through my good times. My life started to change when I was in this home. My life started to change. My younger brother ended up going to Manchester home, changed his life, gave his life to the Lord. My two daughters ended up coming to my church that I was at, Victory Outreach, gave their life to the Lord at the altar. So my life had started to change. I was there for 3 years. And I always used to think, I had a part to do in that. I always used to think, do you know what? I had a plan and a purpose to come off of drugs. And I always used to think, right, I had a part in that. But I ended up leaving and going back to Scotland through pride. I ended up going back to Scotland and saying, right, I can go there and work with folk in addiction that I used to be in addiction with. I just wanted to show that God had been working in my life. But then, 9 months later, when I was back in Scotland, I ended up back round about the same people, back round about doing what I was doing. And I still didn't want to be there. I was different. Something had changed. My wee dad always used to say to me, James, what are you doing back here? Your attitude's changed, your character's changed, your demeanour's changed, but nothing back here's changed. And I still stayed about, get involved in it. So I ended up back on drugs. I ended up turning away from God, and I ended up back in drugs. I ended up back in prison. So when I was back in prison this time, I was like, I need to get away from this. I couldn't even do the prison life back then. When I was back, I had changed. I'd changed for the inside, but I still had to be what I was doing in there, being the person that the prison made me to be. And then when I was in there, I was getting involved with the chaplain, and he kept saying to me, James, keep praying that you're going to get back out and go back into God's will. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So I kept praying about it. Then my dad passed away on Christmas night. I got a phone call on the 5th of December, 2 years ago. And it was my dad. He says, James, I just went to hospital today and they told me that I had internal cancer in 3 places. And I was thinking, He says, just promise me one thing. He says, you'll go back to Liverpool and get your life back. He says, because you had your life back there. And I was thinking, right, I will. And he says, in fact, do you know what? Use this and get out and come and stay with me. He says, do what you can and tell them that you need to come and look after me. But I couldn't. They would never let me out. So, Christmas night, he passed away. And I was thinking, right, I'm out of here. So I got out on the 10th of May. He died on Christmas night, and then I got out on the 10th of May. And I was thinking, I'm going to go and empty my dad's house so we can sell it. I was saying to my daughters, do you want the house? No, we don't want it. Right, we're going to sell the house. I was on my way to empty my dad's house, and I met 3 people. One of them that I'd robbed of drugs before I went to prison. And I was thinking, here we go, this old life coming back up again. So I ends up in a fight, and I get hit with a machete a few times in the head. I nearly tore my shoulder off. I nearly died. I was full of tablets that day as well. I went back to my bed, and my daughters heard about what had happened. 2 years later, they came and I was lying bleeding out on the couch in my flat. The prison had put me in a move-on house. They come back to that flat and found me in that state. And my daughters were saying, no again, Dad, no again. I went to the hospital, got the operation, and the day I woke up, I remember I saying to the nurse, has the operation been done? And she said, yeah. I says, right, take your tubes out, I'm going to get God back in my life. And she was saying, what? Has somebody brought you drugs up, son? And I was like, what? She's like, has somebody brought you drugs up to a visit? I said, no, I'm going to get God back in my life. So I taken the tubes out, I phoned my daughter, and I jumped on the train to come back to Liverpool. But I came back to Liverpool to get into God's will. God brought me back here because He had a purpose and a plan for my life. So I came back to where I had built my foundation with God, because I was back to build that foundation, and that was in the rehabilitation home of Victory Outreach. That was in a discipleship home of Victory Outreach. As many as are here tonight, that is there for everybody to turn back to God, because it's only God that can do that for me. And I was speaking to somebody tonight, and as I said earlier, I always thought I had a part in my walk. I always thought I had a part in coming away for the drugs. But I got a scripture that said in Ephesians 2:8 and 9, It's only by God's grace, through your faith, and not by your own doing, that I'm standing here tonight. So I stand on that scripture tonight, and then getting discipled every single day by God through His Word. When I read that Word and it brings that life back to me, and I see God moving in folks' lives every single day through the discipleship homes, like a church like this, I can't believe I've got the privilege to stand here tonight saying this power of testimony and what God's done in my life, because it's only Him that could do it. But that's there for everybody. That's there for everybody. It says in Romans 10:13, whoever cries out in His name will be saved. And I always stand in that. How many is are crying out to the Lord tonight? Through what we're doing here. But this is God's doing. This is God that orchestrated everybody to come and sit here tonight, to hear this, to hear His testimony, to hear His testimony through the blood of the Lamb. And that's what this is all about. So I just encourage anybody that's in here tonight, is we're all here to pray. The laying on of hands, when Moses got laid on of hands, he came to it. So I thank Kev for the night for holding something for us, to get that privilege to come here and use this platform to glorify God. I thank you so much for that. And I thank every man and woman that's in here tonight that needs that touch for the Lord. Because all we need to do is reach out and cry out in His name. Amen. Thank you very much.